I made it from tier 1 to tier 5 on my free-to-play account in just 1 month, and that was before the price reduction to low tier items, and with minimal grinding. It all comes down to resource management, and this video is going to explain all the tricks that I use to make sure I get the most out of my resources. I've already made a video about all the best items to get in each tier, so if that's what you're looking for, you can go over there. Starting with a quick rule of thumb, do not buy any weapons with A coins, period, until you have all of the mechs that you want. So from tier 1 to tier 6, there are no weapons that are worth spending A coins on. 0. In tier 7, you can get the 12 energy legendary ones, but before that, you should, if possible, spend no A coins on weapons, period. Now, some high level players do use 8 energy weapons along with 16 energy ones on their max to medium mechs of 24 energy. And you can do that too if you want, but again, only after you've gotten everything that you need from tier 7 being Surge and Eclipse mostly, or even going to tier 8 and buying Nomad and Hemlock as well. The 8 energy weapons can be useful, and by getting them early, you can save yourself credits in the long term. However, it will double or triple the amount of time that it takes to get Surge or Eclipse if you decide to get those 8 energy legendary weapons first. And the most important thing is just to make sure that you get to Surge and Eclipse as quickly as possible. Next up, a common mistake that I see players make is buying items from previous Gear Hub tiers. If you're like most players and you really want those cheat code legendary scouts in tier 7, then the most important thing is progression. The Gear Hub will only give you progress stars for the next tier if you buy items that are in your current tier. So if you're in tier 4, you should only be buying things from tier 4 so that you can then get to tier 5. And then once you're in tier 5, only buy things from tier 5 until you're in tier 6, and so on. Now, some of you might have passed up a really good mech in a previous tier, and I'll often get questions related to this. People saying, I'm already in tier 6, should I get Panther or should I go back and get Aegis? And the simple answer is, it's too late, just ignore it. In pretty much every case, there is nothing worth going back tiers to buy, with the exception of Stormrack 6 and Revoker 6, but you probably have those anyway because those are credits and really easy to get. If it's something that you really want, you can always buy it after you have Surge and Eclipse. So again, like the 8 energy legendary weapons, you can always go back and buy them later if it's something that you still want. But those tier 7 mechs are the priority, and every time you spend something in a previous tier, it just takes that much longer for you to get to tier 7. Thankfully though, since tier 7 is basically the end goal, that makes tier 6 the last tier to worry about, and it just so happens that tier 6 has some of the best epic mechs. If you happen to pass up Aegis and you're not sure if you should go back and get it, then don't worry about it, get Panther. They play very similarly, and even though Aegis will work better short term, Panther is the better mech long term anyway. Same thing with Redeemer. If you passed up Redeemer and you're not sure if you should get it, don't worry about it, just get Killshot in tier 6 instead. At rank 4, Killshot is a better mech anyway. And if you passed Cheetah, then like, good for you, that mech sucks, just get Orion. Another thing that players will occasionally do is they will buy things in order to finish certain achievements and try to get A coins from those achievements, but it's not worth it. The cost will almost always exceed the reward, not even considering all the time you waste and the matches you lose because you're trying to use these weird builds to finish them. Just use what you have and finish the ones that you can. You can change up your hanger and use different builds to try to finish achievements, but don't spend especially A coins buying weapons thinking of it as an investment. It is not an investment because you're spending more A coins on those weapons or on those rank ups than you're going to get from the achievements after you finish them. There is a separate note that I do want to make about achievements, but I will get to that later. For now, let's talk about upgrades. Oftentimes, players will spend credits and A coins upgrading mechs and weapons that they likely won't use for a very long time. The best way to avoid that kind of waste is just by not upgrading anything at all, with one exception that I will talk about in a minute. So generally, from tier 1 to tier 5 in the Gear Hub, nothing you get needs to be upgraded, and so you can save a lot of credits and A coins by just leaving things where they are. If you do intend to upgrade though, then I would recommend focusing on mechs rather than weapons. Every time a mech is ranked up, it gains more energy and thus can use higher energy weapons, making upgrades for low energy weapons rather wasteful because you end up replacing them. In general, I'd advise only upgrading weapons that are 10 energy or higher. For mechs, most low tier ones are probably tempting as they're a lot cheaper than the epic and legendaries. Which ones you go for are kind of up to you, but from personal experience I've found upgrading Lancer to be one of the best decisions on my free-to-play account. It costs about 250,000 credits and 800 A-coins to get it to max level, where it's tankier than most rank 4 epic mechs and has the same energy capacity as well. So it's been a massive help, but you have to understand that there is a cutoff point to its usefulness where it stops being valuable because it just can't keep up with the rest of your hanger. Once you get it to max level, then that's it. You cannot upgrade it any further than that, meaning that as you progress, your Lancer will continually get weaker and weaker compared to everything else that you have. The cutoff point for its usefulness is around 5,000 squad power, so if you're close to that or you're already past it, then I wouldn't upgrade Lancer at all. But otherwise, it's a rather cheap way of getting a very solid mech. But regardless of which one you want to go for, here's a bit of advice. Instead of saving up all the credits and A-coins to upgrade one thing to a certain level, just upgrade it once a day. Most players end up wasting 2,000 credits every day just buying blueprints in the shop for the daily task anyway. If you put that into upgrades instead, then you can reduce the relative cost by quite a bit. Doing this to Lancer, for example, 2,000 or more credits per day, upgrading only Lancer, would take 25 days to max, which means 50,000 credits saved that would have been spent on something useless. But even for mechs that you don't plan to max out or you don't plan to upgrade to any usable level, spending a couple thousand credits, so long as it's still very cheap, upgrading one low tier mech every day, spending your daily credits on mech upgrades instead of blueprints will also finish some of the mech achievements, the Master Engineer upgrade achievements, where you have to upgrade a certain mech a certain number of times. It won't necessarily give you more than you spent. More than likely, it'll still end up costing you more than it gives you back, but it's a nice way of spending the least amount possible and getting something half decent in return, as opposed to just throwing 2,000 A-coins into the void on blueprints that you will never use. So moving on, let's talk about crate rush events. There will be many times where you're tempted to gamble on these crate rush events, but you shouldn't. Ignore what anyone else says. I do not care. If you don't have enough A-coins to guarantee that you get the top prize, then you are almost certainly wasting A-coins for nothing. You should never take the gamble unless you're completely okay getting nothing in return. Just by looking at the drop rates, you'll notice that you are 10 to 20 times less likely to get the top prize even if there's only one other thing in the crate. This means it is statistically likely that almost everyone, if they opened these crates, would get the main thing on their last spin. It's not you being unlucky, it is statistically probable, which means if you're even 10 A-coins short, then you're almost certainly throwing all of your A-coins into the void and getting absolutely nothing of value in return. And this is why I only talk about crates in the context of total cost and never cost per spin. If you want to know which crates are worth going for, then I almost always make community posts talking about the recent crate rush events, and you can see what my thoughts on each individual one are there. But in general, if you plan on spending A-coins on any of these, then you should absolutely make sure that you're only doing it if you can afford every single spin. Just as like a bonus point, this one's probably gonna be obvious to a lot of people, but occasionally I do see some people asking if they should get some weapon or mech because they have an implant for it. And no, let me tell you right now, there is no mech or weapon that suddenly becomes worth buying or upgrading just because you have an implant. Good items will get better, but the bad items will stay bad. Once again, if you want to mess around with it later, then go ahead, but you should wait until after you have Surge and Eclipse. And you might say, well, that'll take forever. And yeah, that's exactly why I'm giving this advice. Cheaper does not mean better, and you just make it take longer by buying subpar stuff and then having to get the other stuff anyway. One last thing I will say is that, well, you may have noticed that I have been upgrading and ranking up a lot of things that are not in my current Gear Hub tier. That is simply because I want to be able to try these things. I want to be able to try, especially things that people have said are good, but I haven't done them. And I'll never really know if they're good unless I try it myself. That's not to say that I recommend everybody else do the same thing, but it's just so that I can gather data so I can give better advice for stuff like this. I'm not in a hurry to progress. I don't really want to progress on my free-to-play account. I don't care, because once I get Surge and Eclipse, then it's pretty simple from there, and there's not a whole lot of advice to give from that point. relying on. So for me, I'd rather stay in tier 6 and just using all of the other stuff at around 4000 SP so I can get a better idea of what's worth going for and what's not worth going for. But with that said, I didn't start investing in any of this stuff until after I got to tier 6. I got to tier 6 as quickly as I could. I only bought the stuff that was in my current tier. I didn't go back and buy anything else until I got to tier 6. Then I was okay going back and buying other stuff. And so, you know, like I said earlier, if you want to go back and get stuff, that's fine. I would recommend doing that after you get to tier 7 and, you know, maybe buy stuff with credits in previous tiers while you're in tier 7, saving up A coins for surgery clips, because there's not really many credit-based things in tier 7. And that's fine. That's a decent idea. But yeah, just wanted to kind of throw that out there. And so yes, those are my 5, technically 6 tips for making sure that you waste the least amount of resources possible. Almost everyone has done at least 3 of these at some point on their account, and don't worry too much about it, I've done the same. So long as you keep it in mind from now on, I think you will notice a rather significant increase in your progression, and you'll find that you generally have more A-coins and more credits as well. These are the methods that I use to determine whether or not something is worth spending credits or A-coins on, but if you want the easy list of everything that I think is worth getting in each tier, you should watch this video right here, which goes through the entire gear hub, clear and simple, telling you everything that's worth getting.